been nearly 3 years since I had my son, which means it's been nearly 3 years since I had my C-section. And I often stop to think about how having a C-section affected me, not just physically, but even mentally, and not just short term, but even long term. And so I thought I would come today and share with you a little bit about what my experience has been like. Maybe you find it interesting, maybe you're curious, maybe you have recently had a C-section, or you've got a planned C-section coming up and you just kind of want to know what some people go through and what some people's experience is like. So if you are interested in that, do keep watching, and I hope that this video helps you in some way or another. If you are new here, hi, I'm Chrissy. I am a mom to an almost 3-year-old, and I post motherhood and lifestyle videos. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, do go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you can watch more of my videos. So let's go back 3 years. I can't believe it's actually been 3 years, but anyway, when I was 34 weeks pregnant, I was admitted to hospital because I was having some weird pains, and turns out they were contractions, and they thought that I was going to give birth early. By the next morning, I stayed overnight, and by the next morning they had subsided, and so they sent me home and they were like, there's a chance that you might give birth early, so just kind of be aware and be prepared for that to happen. And 2 days later I had my checkup, and within those 2 days my son turned breech. And I had to schedule a C-section. And when I found out I had to have a C-section, I was quite literally torn apart. It really messed with me. And I'm going to kind of go step by step into different ways that it affected me. But before I do, I'm just going to give you a little bit of context. I have always been that woman, or that girl as well, because this was from when I was really young, where I was kind of unhealthily obsessed with the idea of a natural birth. I have watched so many birthing videos. I used to watch birthing vlogs. I used to watch One Born Every Minute on TV, like obsessively watching birthing videos and daydreaming about the day that I get to experience a natural birth. A little side note, I am going to say a natural birth, and I'm a C-section mom. And I see some other moms, probably like moms who have given birth vaginally, trying to make C-section moms feel better about themselves, I think. I don't know what the thing is, but they're like, every birth is a natural birth. I don't think so. I really don't agree. There was literally nothing about my C-section that felt natural, and I'll go into this a little bit more soon. But yes, I think that a vaginal unmitigated birth is a natural birth, and that is the birth that I always dreamt of. So when I found out that I had to have a C-section, I was completely distraught. And I'll go into a little bit how that happened. So my first reaction, my first process was resentment, a lot of resentment towards my unborn child, which completely makes no sense, but it does at the same time. Like, I was like, you ruined it. Like, it's a horrible thing to say, and obviously that quickly phased out once I came to my senses, but it is something that I think many women might feel. And also resentment towards my own body for failing me. I felt like I was robbed of the opportunity to have the birth I always dreamed of, and I had to mourn it. I had to grieve it, and there was a lot of resentment in this process. And it didn't take long to get past that, but it was a whole journey from when I found out that I have to have a C-section up until a few weeks later, I would say. There was a lot of mental work that I had to do, and I was getting to the point where I was driving myself mad, because there were some people who, like my gynae and some other doctors, they said that you can do these exercises and like stay upside down and do all these things to try and get the baby to turn naturally, and I was just like spending so much time upside down. It was a bit ridiculous when I look back. And yeah, it was really hard in that time. I did feel better eventually. I think after about 2 weeks of this really hard, like, craziness that was going on internally, I was like, listen, this is probably not going to happen. If the baby needs to come out from my tummy, it's fine, and the only way that I'm going to get through it is by accepting it. And so I did, and I've talked a lot about this in another video. I will link it below and I will post it here for you to see. But yes, I have talked about this previously, so I won't take too much time going into this. But yes, I had a call with a friend of mine who is a midwife, and she explained everything to me, and I felt so much more prepared. Another reason, again, I've spoken about this in my birthing video, in my birth experience video, I have certain medical complications which made a C-section so much more scary, because I have issues with anesthesia, I have issues with pain meds. I'm really going round in circles here. I'm trying to be organized. I was talking about the resentment. So yes, there was the resentment that happened, and then eventually when I came to terms with it, the resentment left. But I still always felt a little bit like my body betrayed me, and that I was robbed of the birth experience that I always dreamt of. Another way that I was really, really strongly affected by having a C-section, I mentioned that I used to always watch a lot of birthing videos. Ever since I had my son and I had my C-section, I haven't been able to watch them. And one time I was watching a series on TV, I can't remember what it was, but there was a birth in it, and I felt so unprepared to watch it. I knew it was coming, and when that episode came and I was watching the birth, I felt a bit sick, and I was very emotional. I'm still getting emotional talking about it. I thought I was more past it, but evidently I'm not. And I think I've maybe tried to watch 2 birthing videos since, birthing vlogs by other mom vloggers that I like to follow on YouTube. And it is a little bit easier now, but that was something that I used to take so much joy from, and now it just kind of stings, and I hate that. I really hate it. But it is something that I thought was definitely worth mentioning, because I'm sure there are other mums who, you know, like watching these videos, and maybe someone else has had this kind of experience. So if this resonates with you, please let me know in the comments below. And if there's any way that you overcame it, please also let me know, because I would love some, some help, so that I can kind of really recover from this, grieving that I'm apparently still experiencing. Another thing is, I don't feel like I gave birth. And this is probably very controversial. I'm sure that there are many other C-section moms who don't agree with this and they feel different, but I'm talking about my experience. Like I mentioned before, nothing felt natural about my birth. And also, I don't feel like I gave birth. I feel like my son was birthed from me by the doctors, which he was. But there was nothing that I did. I was laying there with a curtain on my neck and my arms strapped down, terrified that something was going to go wrong again because of my complications. So if you're interested to hear more about this, go and check out my my birthing experience video, where I talk more in detail about all of this. But I never felt, and I still don't after 3 years, feel like I gave birth. And I don't really like that. But it's just the reality. It is how I feel. I don't feel like it was natural. I don't feel like I got to enjoy the process. It was in many ways a bad birth experience for me, and I'm sure that there was a lot of trauma to it as well, because I have blocked out so much of it, which I hate. I spent a long time being unable to talk about it, which is probably why it's taken me 3 years to do this video, and I'm still a little bit shaky, if you can tell from my voice. It was not what I ever hoped for, and I'm so glad that everything went well, of course. I'm so glad that C-sections are available and that they were able to get my son out safely in the way that made most sense for him and for me. Of course, I'm not in any way saying that I wish things happened differently, but the reality is that my birth experience was not one that I ever imagined. It's not one that I can look back on with, good feelings. It was not a great experience. And also, it didn't feel like a birth. It felt like a procedure, It felt like I was going in for a surgery, not going in to meet the boy who would become the absolute love of my life. I was focused about the surgery. I was focused about the procedure and not about the baby that we were about to welcome into our lives. It took over so much of me. Plus, this was all in the height of COVID, with lockdowns, and I was so scared. And it was only like a week before we had the C-section that we found out my husband would be able to be in the room with me. So it was a really, really stressful time. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Because I feel like birth should be such a beautiful thing. And I know that there are many women, even women who have natural births or vaginal births, who don't have a great experience. And this is something that we should talk about more. Birthing your child isn't always beautiful, and it's not always the most amazing experience, and it can be really scary, and it can be really shit, frankly. It can be traumatizing. And I think maybe we need to talk about this more. Maybe people need to be more open, because very often I find that when you talk about having a difficult birth, there's all this toxic positivity where people are just like, oh, just be grateful that you're healthy and that your baby is healthy. Yes, of course we're grateful, but it doesn't take away from the experience that we had, the negative experience that we had bringing our child into this world. And of course, we're still grateful and we still love them. Absolutely. Anyway, the next thing that I wanted to mention is how terrified I am of my future births. I would love to experience a vaginal birth. Oh my God, I can't say this right. I would love to experience a vaginal birth, a fully natural birth if possible, but I would really love to experience that. And I'm really scared. I'm scared that I would have a breech baby again. I'm scared that something might go wrong and I'd need another C-section. I'm really getting emotional. I'm taking myself by surprise here. I am terrified that the doctors that I find will not support a VBAC. Especially the fact that I'm living now in Slovakia and a lot of doctors don't speak English, and a lot of the doctors here, sorry if there's any Slovak doctors watching this, because we've had very bad experiences with doctors and everyone says the same thing, that the doctors are really high and mighty and not very accommodating, and that's really not what you'd need in a situation where you're vulnerable and you want to just have the best experience and the best care possible. So I am terrified. I don't know when the next baby is going to come round. I don't know what's going to happen, but I really hope that we find good supportive doctors and midwives who support a VBAC, a vaginal birth after C-section, who would be able to help me to have the best experience that I can, and obviously who speak English. So that is another aspect that is very, very significant still. And I think in terms of the mental impact, that's kind of it. There's a lot. It's been very heavy. So the rest of this video will be a little bit lighter. But yeah, I would say that having a C-section was harder mentally than it was physically. But, and it's a big but, physically, it was hard. So I'll go into that now. I'll start with the recovery. Again, I've spoken about this in my my birth experience video. Recovery was hard. It was very hard. It was extremely hard for me also because I couldn't take the medication that most mothers have. I did have morphine while I was in hospital, but then when I got back 2 days later, I could just have paracetamol, and I was in agony, and I couldn't walk for a long time. I want to say 2 weeks. I think it might have been less than that. I don't remember. Again, watch the video. I haven't watched it back and I don't think I want to. But you'll find out more about that. But it took a very long time for me to be able to walk comfortably. And I know it's another tangent, but going back to the idea of I'm terrified that I would need another C-section in the future, I couldn't handle recovery by myself with just one baby. I can't even begin to imagine having to recover from a C-section, have a newborn, and a toddler. Like, I don't even want to imagine that. I know that women are superheroes, and I know that many women have experienced this and gone through it, and they came out absolutely fine and everything's okay. And I know that if I had to be in it, I will manage, but I just dread to think of it. So positive vibes, hoping that that won't be my situation. But anyway, yes, so the recovery was very hard. Let's talk a little bit about the scar. I'll be honest, I thought that the scar would have healed more by now. I thought it would take a few months to heal. It's still healing. It's been 3 years. Don't really know what's going on there, but there are parts of it that have healed to that kind of like white, shiny kind of color. But there's parts of it that's still a little bit red. I wonder if it's always going to look like that. I'm not going to show it to you. I don't feel comfortable doing that. But there are parts of it that is still red. Also, sometimes it still itches, which I find really strange. And it's like really scratchy kind of itch where I'm just like, why won't you stop? And sometimes I still feel pain around my incision, which I find very strange. Apparently it is normal because I have checked. Sometimes the pain just comes by itself, and sometimes, and it's really bad when this happens, it's when I'm doing some kind of exercise. So when I'm using certain muscles, like if I'm doing crunches or something like that, that is so painful. It's like a real tightening kind of feeling, and it really stings, and it's quite painful. So yes, 3 years on, that is still happening. There is still a lot of numbness around my incision, so I don't fully feel the skin. Like if I'm touching around it, it's a little bit like, it's a bit of a fuzzy feeling, like I can feel it, but not really. It doesn't feel like normal skin would. And again, 3 years on, this is still the case. Obviously, above the scar, there is the C-section shelf, and that has remained somewhat prominent, and I've recently gained quite a bit of weight, and it's obviously more prominent now. Obviously, the incision is kind of where the top of your pants stay, and so that kind of pushes it in more, and then you have the little blob that comes over, and I've gained weight, like I said, and so now it's blobbing over anymore. Not keen on it, but it is what it is. But yes, worth mentioning as well. And something else that thankfully isn't a problem anymore, but it had taken me months to be able to poop without hurting, and that was not something I expected. I do suspect that it had something to do with the fact that my uterus was removed during the birth. This is not something that is always done. I believe there's only a small percentage of C-sections where they actually remove the uterus and put it back, like they put it back. I talked about this again in the birthing video. But yes, I have a feeling that either they put it in differently to how it was, I don't know, but something moved my insides around, and it took me, I think it was about 5-6 months to be able to poop without being in pain. And that was not great. But thankfully it passed. Like I had got to the point where I thought I might have to have, I'd have to go to a surgeon to get things fixed again, because I saw about some experiences online where they had to move things around again. But thankfully that wasn't the case, and after about 5-6 months I was able to poop again, which is great because everyone poops and you need to poop without hurting. So yeah. So that's kind of it with regards to the pain. Like I said, much lighter than the heavy mental stuff. 3 years on, how do I feel? I feel like I haven't fully recovered from the mental processing of it. I think that I blocked out so much of it, and I kind of swept a lot of the feelings towards it under the carpet because I had to focus on so many things. I still get very, very sensitive and emotional, as you've seen, when I talk about it. And I know that there is a long way for me to go still to be fully come to terms with what happened. And I'm so glad that the pandemic is over and that I will get to, if not experience the birth of my dreams the next time, I get to experience a pregnancy not in a pandemic, because that was hard. It was just a really, really dark time. As you can see, it still affects me. Yeah, pregnancy during the pandemic was hard. Giving birth during a pandemic was hard. Having a newborn during the pandemic was hard. Add on top all of these things, my terror when it came to what to expect during the C-section because of my complications. Processing all these things, then, you know, trying to figure out how to be a mom and what the heck to do with a baby. It's hard, it's so hard. And the amount of support available was limited, obviously, because of the time that this was at. But now what I can say is that I am thriving as a mom. I am loving life as a mom. My son is the most amazing boy. I just adore him. And this is a good one to mention, and I forgot to list it, but I will end with this. I had worried that having a C-section would kill my bond with the baby, but in no way was I prepared for the bond that we would have. In no way did I ever anticipate, or could I ever imagine, the amount of love that I have for this boy. And it hurts. I think when people say love hurts, it's because it is so immensely strong that it wants to burst out of you. And so I'm very grateful that despite the C-section, despite the difficult times and circumstances, despite the trauma perhaps that I experienced during the birth, the bond that I have with my son is the most incredible thing, and the amount of love that I have for him, it's just overwhelming. And if I had to go back in time, I would do it all again, because I know where it would get me. I wish it didn't turn breech, but something that I always say is that things really do happen for a reason. And maybe if he didn't turn breech, I would have had an emergency C-section. And I know that that would have affected me so much worse, because I would have not had any time for preparation. So like this, it worked out. It worked out well, I suppose. And yes, if I had to go back, I would definitely do it all again if I knew where it was going to get me to. So I'm going to end this video there. I hope you have found this interesting or helpful even in some way. If you have experienced this, or if you have anything to share, I would love to hear your thoughts and your experiences, so please go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. And on that note, I just want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Until next time, bye.